And you're live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Planning and Corporate Services meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order at 5 o'clock on March 13, 2023. And I would ask Councillor Steinhoff Gray to lead the RAND acknowledgement after we do roll call. Whoops. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Pranger. Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
I'd like to also acknowledge our staff who is here and a number of guests in the hall as well. And we do have some staff present via Zoom as well. Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to the proposed agenda? Seeing none, if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, you can declare them now or as they arise during the meeting. All right, we have a series of public meetings. The first one is the Committee of Adjustment. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Roy Kavanaugh, that council move into Committee of Adjustment and upon completion return to council.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. I'd like to note the same attendance here. Call the Committee of Adjustment meeting to order at 5:02. Once again, if there's any pecuniary interest, to declare it. And we have the adoption of our previous minutes. Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minutes dated February 13th, 2023 as circulated.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. We have one minor variance application, the applicant being Cole and Susan Cruikshank. And I would welcome our county planner, Jack Van Dorp, to come to make the application presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy to be here this evening with you. We have a minor, I'm going to get this mic a little closer to me. And we have a minor variance this evening for a accessory building, a garage. It's a property just down the street, down near the water's edge. The purpose of the variance is to obtain relief from the requirement that the garage be located in the side or rear yard. The applicant has cited insufficient space in the side yards and environmental constraints in the rear yard. So you can see in the site plan that the garage is proposed in the front yard with a 6-meter setback to the street. And you can see the property in the series of images that we've provided, including a star showing the location of the proposed garage. The application has been evaluated against the 4 tests. Staff is of the opinion that it does meet those 4 tests, and our recommendation, subject to matters that may arise from the public meeting, is the application could be approved. There's a series of standard conditions that we would attach to that, and a condition requested by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation that an archaeological assessment be completed. It couldn't be completed before the application was filed due to the weather conditions, but they're comfortable with it being completed as a condition, so we've included that. happy to take any questions from committee.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dorp. Actually, I'll refer this to the members of the anyone here at the hall. Is there anyone from the applicants that would like to speak to this? No, we're good. Is there anyone from the public gallery who would like to speak to this? Anyone from the public gallery? No? Council members, are there any questions that you have for our planner? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, Jack, it's really more of a comment. I noticed that the Sun Group wanted an archaeology dig or assessment, but the Métis didn't. I'm a little bit confused what one group did and what the other group didn't. This is a developed piece of property that's grass and everything. So I'm a little confused why they were looking for an assessment in the first place.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we evaluate applications, we have a series of criterion that come to us that are developed by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is the nation with, I think, maybe a broader territorial interest within this part of Bruce County. So that's maybe why SON would ask and the Métis may not. But in terms of the potential and the site, there are a number of criteria that we do have from the ministry. And one of those criteria is what's called deep and extensive disturbance. And that relates typically to like subdivisions since the 60s that have come through where there's been really extensive regrading associated with that. But we didn't see that in this case. And that there may still be the potential for archaeological resources on the property, just shallow beneath the sod.
Any other questions from council regarding this application? Clerk, please.
Okay, that the Committee of Adjustment approved the minor variance for Cole and Susan Cruikshank for the property described as 1632 Concession 5, Municipality of Kincardine, to locate an accessory building / structure in the front yard.
May I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the application? Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn at 5:07 PM.
Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, the council move into public meeting and upon completion, return to council.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, so we've just moved out of the Committee of Adjustment, which deals with minor variances, and we're going into the public planning meeting where we will talk about some planning issues that need to be addressed. And I'd like to call this public meeting of the Council of the Municipality to order at 5:08. Well done, team. Excellent. And for Susan and Cole, thanks for being here. You're all done. You can stay if you want, but there's more important things at home, like children, for you to look after than this. So. Yeah, just leave the check at the door on the way. So yeah, that's good. Once again, the roll call remains the same. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions that you would like to offer to the agenda? And once again, if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest, to declare it now or as it arises. We have two presentations this evening regarding municipal drains, and I would invite Jeremy Taylor to come forward from RJ Burnside to explain the engineering report. Mr. Taylor, please. And I see you brought, oh, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I brought my colleague Caitlin Ferguson as well. who worked on the both reports, but is going to do the presentation on the municipal drain number 21 report. I believe that's the first one on your agenda tonight, so I'll pass it over to her to walk through and explain.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Caitlin from Burnside, as Jeremy mentioned, and I was the engineer for MD21. So the report was completed under Section 4 of the Drainage Act as a result of the petition for a new municipal drain for Lot 19 in Concession 5, 18 and 19 in Concession 6, and Lot 18 in Concession 7 in the geographic township of Bruce. The area requiring drainage for this project was determined to be lots 17 to 19 in Concession 6 and 19 in Concession 5. The submitted petition is valid in accordance with Section 4.1 of the Act. Appointment for this drain was received in March 2020. The on-site meeting occurred in August 2020 to discuss the reasons for the petition, landowner concerns, and Drainage Act process. An information meeting was held in July 2021 to provide the preliminary design, cost estimate, and assessments to the landowners. At that meeting, the owner of Lot 18 in Concession 7 asked for the channel enclosure to extend all the way to his northern property boundary. It was indicated that this would add significant costs due to the topography on the northern portion of Lot 18. A second information meeting was held in January of 2023 to provide the landowners with the updated design, cost estimate, and assessments. And we did not receive any requests for additional changes, so we proceeded to filing the report in February. A summary of the proposed drainage works is as follows. There's about 850 meters of channel work, including a field crossing and a water control structure in Concession 8. About 2,600 meters of closed drain across Concessions 7 and 6. And the filling of approximately 1,100 meters of existing channel in Concession 7. To receive permitting for this work, specifically to enclose the existing channel in Concession 7 and deepen and widen the existing channel through the wetland in Concession 8, an aquatic habitat assessment, terrestrial habitat assessment, and wetland impact assessment were completed. We have received the required permits from both DFO and the SBCA for the proposed work. And now I'm just gonna briefly go over the contents of the report. The body of the report itself contains the background information, meeting summaries, and proposed design for the project, as well as details for maintenance and future considerations. And then in Appendix A, there's allowances for right-of-way and damages. Appendix B has the cost estimate, which is a total of $939,000, which is broken down into construction of $651,000, allowances of $80,000, engineering of $159,000, and admin and contingency of $48,000. To round it out, there's Appendix C, which has the schedules of assessment for both construction and maintenance. Appendix D has the technical memorandums previously mentioned and the agency documents. I will note the SVCA permit was received after submission of the report, so it's not currently in the report. Appendix E and F has the specifications for construction, and Appendix G is the drawings. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Caitlin, for that report. We do appreciate the work that you and the company have put into developing this for us. Just as we begin this, it's always wise to note that this council does not have any ability to talk about the assessed charges. That is for our court of revision that we will be providing at a later date. And of course, all the people on that list of petitioners and landowners involved will have opportunity to speak at that time. But this is an opportunity if there's anyone here that would like to speak to the engineering aspects of Municipal Drain 21. If they are interested, they're welcome to come to the microphone. Please give your name and your comments. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to Municipal Drain 21? Seeing no one, are there any council members that would like to question the engineers regarding the engineering aspects of this drain? Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I always have a concern because I live along the water And eventually, I call it flatlands. I know that our CAO calls it farmlands. But all the flatlands are getting drained awful quickly with the Big O and drainage tiles and these drainage programs that you have. Where's this water going? I mean, you know, basically it's got to hit the lake. When you do your engineering, do you take it all the way from the property all the way down to the lake, or is that our responsibility after that? Because I don't see an EA associated with this, but sooner or later, all that water is going to be drained to the lake. And I'm really concerned because we've had to do some huge projects, drainage projects from the flatlands down to the lake, and they're costing us $1 million, $1.5 million. So where is this water going, if you don't mind answering the question?
I can attempt the first answer to the question. The watershed's already there and the water's already getting to the downstream water course, but you're right in that tiling it does allow it to get there quicker. No, we don't do any further studies downstream. We take what we believe is a sufficient outlet, which is the down gradient receiving water course.
Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Do you ever test the water that's coming out of these drainage things? You're allowing this farm to actually do a lot more drainage. And do we know exactly what comes into our municipal drains?
I can answer that, Councillor, through you, Mayor. No, we don't do testing on municipal drains typically as part of the project work that we do. I would say generally speaking, the landowners do not want, if we're worried about nitrates or phosphorus running off their land, they want the value of whatever they put on the land to be kept on it from that standpoint. There are a number of studies out there that look at channels and trying to slow down the water if we see overland flow occurring. So building in berms, trying to do Hickenbottoms to let the water drain out slower from that standpoint and the sediment to settle out. With this drain specifically, MD number 21, the landowners have indicated they need an under drainage outlet. They're trying to put in tiling systems across their properties to make them more effective in the use of their crops. The amount of water, like Caitlin mentioned, that's in the watershed is still the same amount of water that falls in the land. What happens with the flow is you may see a little bit of a peak flow in times, but the intention of the under drainage is to try to retain as much of the water on the land by controlling the water table level. So in essence, not in essence, but the attempt here is to better control the water and reduce that peaking that happens with the flow.
It seems an unusual sort of outcome, but it is the intent of tile drainage to regulate the flow of water off the field rather than particularly in spring thaws to see it gushing over land. Anyway, any other questions from council regarding the engineering aspects of this report? All right. Oh, yes, there is one question online. Nancy Mishi is here regarding Municipal Drain 21. Welcome, Nancy. Could you give us your comments or questions, please?
Thank you, Mayor McLeod. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Nancy Mickey and I'm representing the Porsche property. And the Porsche property is lots 17, 18, and 19, concession 8. And the municipal drain number 21, it outlets in lot 19. We are concerned about the outlets, that they could be blocked by beaver dams in lot 20. There are beaver dams there, and so it is a concern of ours. Lot 20 is not in the watershed. The tenant farming the property has advised me that they have had to clean the beaver dams out in the past. So currently there are beaver and beaver dams located in lot 20. And I have spoke to RJ Burnside concerning this, and so they are quite aware of our concern about this. The improvement to the drain will carry a great lot of water to that outlet. Who is going to maintain the outlets and be responsible for the beaver control, which provides the outlet for the entire drain? We would like to go on record with the question and would appreciate an answer. This will be for the current situation that is on lot 20 with the beaver and the beaver dams, and for any future. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Mickey, and I'll refer that to Mr. Taylor for a response, please.
Yep,
Or I'm sorry, Ms.
Sorry, I'll-
Ferguson.
I'll jump in. So we had a discussion with Nancy back in early part of February, I think it was Friday, the February 3rd, about this issue. She informed us that the tile outlets that the landowner has on their property were outletting into the channel, where we also are proposing our MD number 21 channel to outlet into a natural channel that runs through the lot 20 property. First thing with it is a natural channel that we're dealing with here in the downstream area. As part of the drainage works, we're required to take our proposed drain to a sufficient outlet, which at this time we feel we have taken it to a sufficient outlet of the natural channel that's downstream. With beaver dams, if they're part of a municipal drain, then the drainage superintendent can work with the landowners and get beaver dams removed. When it's part of a natural channel, it's really left up to the landowners on each individual property to deal with beaver dams that occur. The information or what we had mentioned to Nancy at the time in February was to contact the neighboring landowner, because it was on private property, to see if they could together work and get the beaver dam removed. We feel with the outlet that we've provided as part of this municipal drain with the channel will be sufficient to function and provide sufficient outlet. The comment about more water, we'd say that there is times where the peak flow will be more, but the amount of water that's flowing through there will be the same as what is in the system right now from a watershed standpoint. If there's concerns with the private tile outlets that are on her not her property, but the property she's representing, that channel is part of a larger watershed, and we'd feel that if the tile outlets are a concern, on the private tile outlets are a concern, that petition for drainage works of the entire watershed, not just our sub-watershed of number 21, would be required to look into and do any work in that natural channel further downstream.
So what I heard from that was that the portion of the drain with which this council is particularly concerned, the municipal drain, there is a very specific process for anyone to ask for and receive clean out services through our drainage superintendent that we have. Like private lands is a different issue, but on the municipal part of the drain, there is it's Mr. Goosey in our organization that is the drainage superintendent, and a phone call to him and an assessment of the challenges and the clean out would be arranged through Mr. Goosey and his department. Is that not accurate?
For the municipal drain portion, yes. The portions that Nancy Mickey has pointed out here are a private channel downstream of our scope of work.
So the private lands would be outside of our jurisdiction really, or our authority to take works in that regard.
At this point in time, yes.
Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, please.
So just a follow-up question based on what I think I heard, and I'm by no means an expert on this, so bear with me. Have we confirmed that the beaver dams are there? Because the thing I'm thinking is if it's going to increase the water flow at peak times, and then we haven't something that will be blocking its path through the natural channel, and we may have to look at doing a larger portion of the drain to ensure that everything works as anticipated based on the projections. I'd just like to understand, because then we should be looking at the bigger solution as opposed to fixing this section to find a bottleneck further down. I would like to understand better. Thanks.
So I think if I got your question right, was have we gone further downstream? And no, we have not this time.
So if there's a larger area to be drained, that would be a petition by adjoining landowners of that their request would be to attach or use some of the outlet opportunities for their drain. But once again, if it's private property, that's not our responsibility at this time. And our obligation at this point is to determine if we believe the engineering for this drain is adequate and suitable for for the needs that have been asked for and pointed out by the engineering firm.
Correct. We're looking to respond to the petition by the landowners to provide an outlet for their under drainage. That's what the report has indicated for the municipal drain number 21, so.
Also in our, my notes here, Ms. Ferguson or Mr. Taylor, if you would, this is a section 4 drain. And for these particular kinds of drains, landowners have an opportunity to add or remove their names to the petition. Could you briefly explain how that might affect any of the landowners' applications or desire to be involved in this for a better outcome for some of their properties?
I don't think there's anyone here that hasn't signed the petition, so there isn't anyone available to sign, but essentially, yes, the landowners have an opportunity if they wish to support the project and they haven't previously signed the petition, they could sign a petition this evening. Or if there's someone that has changed their mind and no longer wants to be a signer of the petition, they could withdraw their name. The one thing that we have to remind them that is if the petition is no longer valid, then the original petitioners pay for the cost incurred to date. It's divided amongst them.
So I suppose my question is if Ms. Meckie had a question about drainage opportunities, it's not too late for the property she represents to be included in a larger work, if that would be her desire. Depending on where the watershed is, I understand its geography, but I didn't know whether this is an opportunity to expand the scope of it or whether it's appropriate for our council just to move ahead as per the recommendation that's here.
In our opinion, the area requiring drainage deals with just the under drainage of the properties that have been identified, which are in the concession 7, 6, and 5 areas. So this issue that she's bringing forward would be, I think, a separate issue to deal with in a future petition because it involves a much larger area and a different channel.
And may I add, as a different watershed, there's much more landowners, so there's be a numerous amount of landowners that have to be notified about a new project because it would affect a great number of people. So it would be better suited as another project because it's a different watershed, like Jeremy had said.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for the engineering firm regarding this report? Okay, this decision will be made as a matter arising from this public meeting. And if approved at that time, first and second reading of the bylaw will be given. But we do have a motion from the clerk to advance this to that stage. Clerk, please.
So moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that council accepts the engineer's report from Municipal Drain 21 and refers the bylaw to matters arising from public meeting to be read a first and second time.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's defeated. All right, Mr. Taylor, what did we just do?
So the purpose was to pass a provisional bylaw, which you defeated. The instructions from here basically is the appellants, or not the appellants, sorry, the landowners that signed the petition can appeal that decision to the tribunal that you're not accepting the report. The other option is to refer the report back to the engineer with what you want to request or potentially consider changing to make it an acceptable report. Keeping in mind costs were not discussed, so I'm presuming that you're not referring it back due to costs. The petitions were identified as valid, so I presume we're not referring it back for validity of petition. The landowners that have requested a petition for a drainage works are expecting a report to be prepared and submitted and passed through the process. So the question to the council is what needs to be changed in your opinion? As referring the report back to the engineer to resubmit and to council to be acceptable.
Okay, so I'll address that to the councillors who voted against this recommendation. Please tell me what, or tell the engineers what your specific concern was, which led you to vote against this motion. Councillor Steinhoff Gray, start with you, please.
So I guess the specific concern that I had, which I didn't necessarily feel was accounted for, based on the information provided by the other person that joined this meeting, Mickey, thank you. And I guess it's not that I'm necessarily against it. I need enough time to look at something before I just approve it. So for me, the concern that I had is if we're not taking into consideration where that water is going and the fact that we could have a bottleneck, I don't understand what the ramifications of that bottleneck that we're introducing is when we speed up the potential peaks with the water flow. So because we didn't look beyond that point, that's really what I was missing to understand the decision that I was making.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kennedy, did you vote against this as well? Okay, your
Yeah.
specific concern, please.
Yeah, the same with me. I'm worried about the water flow and similar to what the previous counselor said. And I'm a little worried about that we're not testing. You know, I kind of find that hard to believe that we don't test water that's going into another area. Thank you.
Thank you for those concerns, but that's way outside of our jurisdiction regarding testing. That's we don't even want to begin to think about what that would mean. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I too had very similar concern as to what Councillor Steinhoff Gray mentioned, as well as going to abstain since I missed part of the report presentation and I wasn't prepared to approve it directly, but I'm abstaining is the same as rejecting, so I just made it quicker by putting it in my, but I have the same concerns, basically, the bottleneck and the additional water flows at times.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I agree with my other fellow councillors. You know, this is a big project. I know the landowners want to do it and everything, but I don't know if they're thinking long-term for us. I mean, you know, if we have a problem and there's too much water coming down, all of a sudden it becomes the taxpayer's problem. So I want a little more understanding of exactly how much water is coming through this new project, not just that the same amount is coming and don't worry about it because it's going to go down through a natural channel. What happens if that channel fails? So I think you need to do a little more homework in really understanding for us where the water, how much water is going to come. And when you start talking about lot 20, and then you say it's not even part of this thing, it is part of our community. So, you know, we have the ultimate power to say yes or no to these things. So we just need to have a little more information so we feel comfortable that we're not actually forcing this down to somebody else who's going to be a problem down the future. Thank you.
Okay, so could you address a question for me, please, Mr. Taylor? Who picks up the additional engineering costs for these requests?
So basically it becomes part of the revised report as it comes back, or once I take this information away and represent the report or reconsider and provide some additional information. So I think if I could summarize what I've heard there basically is that the reasoning for not accepting the report tonight is there's concerns with lands downstream of this watershed that's been identified in this report. And that you want a more detailed explanation of the flow of water coming through the drain and how it affects the downstream property, specifically lot 20 at this point. Is there any concern how far downstream you want me to take a look at this and provide more definition? Because at some point we hit a natural channel. We have hit a natural channel, in my opinion, that is taking the flow of water that's coming through this watershed as it is. So just for some clarity, because I don't want to come back here again and then keep going down further downstream. So not to be facetious by any means, I just want to give clarity on how far are we going here, because
So
in my
the-
opinion, the report that we prepared tonight does take it to sufficient outlet, which is one of the requirements under the Drainage Act. We do feel that it is adequate in those conditions in, but we can go and take another look and provide some further information at a follow-up meeting if that's what's being requested.
So I suppose the answer to that question is from an engineering perspective, which is challenging for you to demonstrate to us that there's sufficient outlet for it, which is a challenge because I believe you've already said in your report that you believe there's a sufficient outlet. So yeah, okay. Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
So just as a point of clarification, because I know you had conversations about the beaver dams that were there. I've seen the effects of beaver dams, which is part of where my hesitancy came from. I'll be honest with you. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, given that it was brought up in the context of where this water was going, that it was like the main outlet. For me, I didn't have enough clarification on whether or not those dams are still in place, the beaver dams, because it sounded like that was, so for me, the primary focus would be this lot 20. If that's where it's going to disrupt the water channel, I wouldn't be asking you to go all the way through. Just having seen what a beaver dam can do, it gave me hesitation.
Thank you.
All right, so we need a motion to refer this back to the engineer for a more exhaustive report regarding the outlets. We need a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. By Councillor Stewart. By Councillor Kennedy. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And that carried. No, I voted for. All right, 4.2 McDonald Municipal Drain. I'd like to ask Mr. Taylor and Ms. Ferguson to lead us through this engineering report, please.
So this report is initiated, it's a section 78 report, which means it's an improvement to an existing municipal drain report. Three main purposes of this report are being addressed. First one is an improved outlet for a branch B, which is an under drainage outlet for lots 23 through 25 in concession 11 of Bruce Township. The second one is to address the 1980s tribunal order was given to the municipality of, the Township of Bruce at the time, to address two private lane crossings that are part of the municipal drain, incorporating them in whenever any future work was done. And the third purpose of this report is to provide an improved outlet for lands upstream of the concession 10 crossing. So this drain, as I mentioned, is located in Bruce Township. I don't know if you have the reports in front of you or the drawings are at the back, but I'm looking at drawing 1 of 6, which shows a plan view of the report. So the McDonald Municipal Drain extends downstream through lot 19 of concession 11. The work we're focusing in on is on lot 21 at the concession 10 road crossing. It continues upstream through lands on the concession 11 side through lot 21 and 22. Crosses the road again on concession 10 and then continues on the south side of concession 10 up to the upstream end of it, which is lot 25. Our appointment for this drain report was given to us in September of 2021. We had a landowner meeting, or called the on-site meeting, in November of 2021. It was actually at one of the landowner's properties, Mr. White, who's actually here tonight, on his property, which is lot 22 on concession 11. At that meeting, we discussed the request for improvement, which came from the upstream lands for a private tile under drainage outlet or an improvement to branch B. We had an information meeting in May of 2022 at the Underwood Hall. We provided preliminary cost estimates, the design at the time preliminary, and some initial assessments. So landowners had an understanding of what we were going down or what path we were going down with regards to this report. From that meeting, we received some feedback from the landowners where the drain was on their property. We also had a number of landowners that were concerned with their initial preliminary assessment. Following that information meeting, we met with two of the landowners that have the private lane crossing on their property currently. So that's lot 21 and lot 22. For the work that was required on this drain, there was a fair bit of deepening and widening, specifically on Mr. White's property. So we went out and we met with Mr. White and reviewed the details of how the drain would be constructed or improved through his property. We looked at which side of the drain would be best to work on, as the drain literally passes through his backyard as it travels up to concession 10. We looked at some of the constraints on his property with fencing that he has. We discussed trying to work through the construction of it to work around his grazing operations that he has with his cattle. And we also talked about what the design of the new crossing would be. As mentioned, there was a 1980s tribunal order that ordered that these two private lane crossings be incorporated or replaced in part of the drainage works in the future to avoid any more undermining or erosion of the current structures. We also talked to the lot owner, the property owner on lot 21. It's a smaller property. It's approximately 2 hectares in size, but there is a private crossing on that property as well. We did the same thing, talked about which side of the drain to work on, how to work through their property. That landowner has subsequently sold the property to new landowners in late 2022. So we had some follow-up conversations directly with the landowner on lot 21 to get them up to speed on the past discussions and meetings. We had a third meeting with the landowners in February. It was planned in person, but due to the weather, we rescheduled to a virtual meeting. One of the few storms we had this winter, so unfortunate. And we also had a number of discussions with the landowners throughout the watershed that couldn't attend the virtual meeting. As mentioned, 3 main purposes for the design of for this improvement to the project. One is getting a deeper outlet for the upstream landowners on branch B. They have done an extensive under drainage of their property and need the drain to be lowered to provide them sufficient outlet for their under drainage. Originally, branch B crossed concession 10 into the channel. When we looked at the deepening that was required, we would have had to deepen that channel right alongside the concession 10 property. With the deepening, we deemed that to be an unsafe condition. It's already fairly deep, much deeper than any roadside ditch that you have within the municipality. So what we did instead is looked at taking a tile from the under drainage across on the north side of the road and putting it into the existing channel on the lot 22 property. As I mentioned, we had a number of conversations with Mr. White, talked about different options, and we explored them as we could. We ended up trying to keep the tile as minimal disruption to his property as we could. The second thing, as I mentioned, was addressing the 1980s tribunal order. So we are replacing the 2 private lane crossings in lot 21 and 22. Currently, they're box culverts, concrete structures, fairly old, showing some signs of age, I guess you could say, some cracking in them as well. So replacing them, typically municipal drain crossings are designed with a 1 and 2 year return period for flows. Because of the location of these drains in the backyards of each property and having to access between their agricultural buildings and their residential properties, we increased the design. We looked at getting the flow closer to a 10-year design. And then we also compared the modeling of the culverts for up to the 100-year event as well, comparing the elevations of the water that would have to reach to pass through each of the culverts. So the 2 culverts in the rear yards of these properties are designed as a 2-meter diameter pipe. A 2-year design would probably be more like the 1.2 to 1.4 meter time to design. So they are definitely upsized. We did that to provide additional protection and then respecting the fact that they're right in the residential properties. Typically, municipal drains are through fields, so access through them all times a year isn't necessarily needed. So a 1 and 2 year design is often sufficient. But in this case, we increased the design For comparison purposes, on the concession road 10 downstream, I believe the culvert size is 2.2 meters. So road crossings are obviously are designed at a much higher standard to prevent road flooding. And then the third thing that we did with the drain is the concession 10 road crossing upstream of Mr. White's property, showing some damage and some age and also some blocked outlet. So with the deepening that's required, not only to replace the box culverts, but also to provide a new outlet for branch B, we're able to provide this lowering and provides additional outlet, or an improved outlet, I shouldn't say additional, improved outlet for the majority of lands on the concession 10 side. Overall, the report follows a similar format to what number 21 does. The body of the report explains all the meetings we've had, the design, and the process as we went through. Appendix A has the allowances as mentioned. Appendix B is the cost estimate. Total cost of this report is $382,000. Construction costs are estimated at $236,500. We have allowances to the landowners of $34,590. Engineering, including construction review, is $83,500. And administration contingency, interest charges if needed are $27,400. Our Appendix C has the assessment schedules as well as a new maintenance schedule to maintain the drain in the future. E and F have our details of our construction specification. Section D has the permitting, not only from DFO for the works in the channel, but also from the SVCA with regards to replacing the culverts. And we included our sizing and our modeling that we did to justify the sizes of the culverts within this report. Finally, Section G, which hopefully you were looking at as I was talking through the report, but they include the drawings for construction. Any questions at this time for council?
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Once again, this council will not be dealing with any questions regarding assessments. That's for our court of revision at a later date. But I will ask if any property owners would like to speak to the engineering aspects of this drain. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this presentation, please? Anyone from the public that would like to speak to this? Okay. Council members, are there any questions that you would like to address the engineers with? Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. You had said that for the residential crossings that you're gonna improve. I think it was lot 21, 22, right? You had looked at increasing them to the 2-meter culverts for in that, sorry, that addresses the 10-year event, or was that? Because you said the 2-year was the smaller one, right? And it's
2-meter would be 100.
no, it wasn't 100 years. So I was curious because you said they're increasing to the two meters. What would have but you looked at the 100-year event. What would the 100-year have required? Do you know?
No, I don't know what size it would have been.
Okay.
It would have been significantly more.
Yeah.
We'd taken a box culvert and what we're proposing here is corrugated steel pipe. So it's a circular diameter.
Yep.
Or circular rather than a square box.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'm looking at some of these crossings. Some of these crossings look like they're on private property, but it looks like we're paying for it because of the tribunal. The tribunal was done in 82, so I don't even familiar with it. Are they paying for their own private property, these new culverts or the new, because one of them looks like it's on private property. Thank you.
So the municipal drain is a combination of private and public property as it crosses through the lands. The costs are being assessed to the entire watershed. Part of the cost of the crossings are directly assessed to the landowners and part of it is cost of the drain. So the municipality has property within the watershed via the road. So indirectly, yes, the municipality does pay part of the cost, but so do all the landowners within the watershed.
Yeah, we have heard before the two different components of assessment, one being outlet and one being benefit. And, it's the engineer's responsibility to determine whether or not it's an outlet for water flow or whether it's a benefit for field values or whatever. correct me if I'm incorrect in those definitions, but it's two aspects. It's not all just about someplace for the water to be discharged from your field.
Correct. There is benefit and outlet assessment as defined in the Drainage Act that we follow when we're looking at assessments.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Just a clarification to follow up through you, Mayor. When you say watershed, is that everybody on this drainage thing has to pay for all this as assessed? Because when I look at watershed, I look at, you know, more Saugeen Valley and everything, but are you talking like everyone up beyond that and down will have to pay for this improvement?
So when we talk watershed, we talk about the watershed for the individual drain. We look at contours, we look at mapping, we walk the drain in the areas of concern, and that's where we define it. So on the drawings, we actually show what we believe to be the watershed for this drain. Second question, I believe, was you asked about upstream and downstream. Generally, only lands that are within the area of the work and upstream of it pay for it. So when I mentioned at the start, part of this municipal drain continued further downstream. Those lands are not paying for any of this work because it's upstream of where their property is.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. And through the chair, just a brief comment to Caitlin here. I've really enjoyed reading all 283 pages of your reports. Thank you very much. I found them very thorough.
Thank you.
Maybe one of the first councillors to ever have said that out loud. Maybe. They're challenged, interesting stuff. Once again, a decision will be made as a matter arising from this public meeting. And if improved, first and second reading of the bylaw will be given at that time. So clerk, you have a motion for us, please. Do you need a mover and seconder? No.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Bill Stewart, that council accepts the engineer's report from McDonald Drain and refers the bylaw to matters arising from public meetings be read a first and second time.
All in favor? And that's carried. All right, adjournment from our public meeting.
Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Mike Hinger, this public planning meeting adjourn at 5:51 PM.
All right, so what's that? Oh, all in favor? Yeah, good, okay. Thank you, thank you. So we're back now to thank you, Jeremy and Caitlin. We appreciate your work on these. All right, so we have matters arising from our public meeting and we are back in our council meeting. Clerk, please.
So the first one will be moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that the McDonald Drain bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time and numbered as bylaw 2023-035.
So this is the McDonald Municipal Drain, the last second one that we heard, okay? So all in favor of the motion? That's carried. And we should have another motion regarding Municipal Drain 21 as well. All right. Court of Revision.
This is moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark. With the provisional passing of bylaw 2023-035, McDonald Drain bylaw, council is required to appoint 3 members to sit as the Court of Revision. The Court of Revision for this drain has been scheduled for April 12th at 1 PM and will be supported by the Clerk's Department and the Municipal Drainage Engineer. So this is being moved that Mayor Craig, Councillor Hinchberger, and Councillor Steinhoff Gray be appointed as members of the Court of Revision for Municipal Drain, McDonald Municipal Drain. And further that Councillor Steinhoff Gray be appointed as chairperson for the Court of Revision for the McDonald Municipal Drain.
Now you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And we have the motion regarding referring the municipal drain 21 back to the engineers for an expansion of their report.
Okay, so this will be moved by Andrea, seconded by Rory. And it will be again that council refer municipal drain 21 back to the engineer RJ Burnside for additional details.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. All right, we have a two motions here. In the municipal budget. Two motions. Sorry. Oh. We have a resolution regarding developing an inventory of municipal lands. Clerk, please.
Whereas in Ontario, finding a place to live is a struggle for many due to low vacancy rates, limited supply, and an insufficient mix of housing options. And whereas the cost of ownership and rental rates are rising much faster than incomes. And whereas municipalities have a role to play in solving this problem. And whereas the cost of land represents a significant portion of the cost of housing. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to prepare a report that outlines an inventory of lands owned by the municipality of Kincardine and assesses the potential of those lands or parts thereof to support the creation of attainable and affordable housing.
Me a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Hinchberger, seconded by Councillor Kavanaugh. Any discussion? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. This is actually, for the most part, is related to an action item that's actually already in the housing action plan that was produced in September of 2022. It was a little more broader and asked for a review of federal and provincial lands as well. So I tailored it just towards municipal. I wouldn't think there would be anybody present here that doesn't recognize and accept that housing isn't an issue in the province of Ontario or the country for that matter, and specifically attainable. And I'd like to be part of a solution and not necessarily part of a problem. And I'd just like to emphasize the focus here is whatever might happen as a result of this, the intent of my motion is it's related to attainable and affordable housing, not market housing. And maybe I'll reserve any comments depending on what other discussion there is.
Further discussion, Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, this is an easy one to support, Councillor Hitchberger, but the only thing I would ask is, what are you looking for timing to get this report back? I think that's important. And maybe you need to work with CAO over there, Jim, but thank you.
If I could, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I actually had a discussion with the CAO about a half hour before that I forgot about, and she'd felt quite comfortable that the administration could complete this entire ask within 4 months' time, and probably would surprise us with an inventory of municipal lands well in advance of that. Perfect. Okay.
Further questions? Heard the motion, all in favor? That's carried. Consideration of bylaws, 2023 municipal budget bylaw. Clerk, please.
This is moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the 2023 budget bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-036.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. All right, moving into committee of the whole. Clerk, please.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Bill Stewart, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion return to.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting for the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5:59 on March 13th. See, the roll call remains the same for council and staff. If you have any amendments or additions, deletions to the agenda, please, none of them. And once again, if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest, you may declare now or at the time of the item. Adoption of minutes for our past committee of the whole meeting. Clerk, please.
Moved by Jennifer Prenger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that the committee of the whole, minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on March 6, 2023 be adopted as printed.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, once again, I'd like to welcome back Jack Van Dorp from our County Planning Department. And as Mr. Van Dorp prepares, I have a couple of questions for you, if you might. Did you write Bill 23?
No, sir.
Did you have any say in the matter?
The province had a circulation period where they were seeking comments on Bill 23. And they did adopt it, I believe, before that had fully concluded.
So my point being, Mr. Van Dorp is not the author of the report. He is only the messenger. And not appropriately, no. So just remember that as annoyed as all of us, including Mr. Van Dorp might be, he is the messenger. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Councillor and Mayor. So we have a lot of slides this evening. I realize you've been in your meeting for a while already. What we intended in offering this presentation to you was really more of a resource package together with an opportunity for discussion on any points that may be of interest. So I will move fairly quickly through large portions of this material. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to either try to respond as best as I can or take them back for further information to you. So key things on slide 1, there's a lot to digest here. The province has been working at a housing supply action plan. This bill is a big step in that, but it's one step in it, and we expect that there will be more to come. One of the key changes was additional residential units that came through this bill, and it permits up to 3 units on parcels of land in what are called the parcels of urban residential land, so fully serviced settlement areas. And so it was a bit unclear the way that this legislation was written. It's caused a bit of consternation across the province from an implementation perspective. We did work with the county solicitor and with your chief building official, and we've prepared what we provided, with apologies for the small text, would be inserted into your bylaw as an explanatory note, effectively saying your zoning bylaw does not provide for additional residential units to the scale and extent that are directed by the province. In order to recognizing that the province has set a bylaw passed under section 34 that says, that doesn't say what we say you have to do, is of no effect. We basically said, well, why don't we just write this, stick it into your bylaw, and then we'll deal with all of the final details of making your bylaw, catching your bylaw up with things like building heights and setbacks and whatever else through your next comprehensive update. We thought the timing was timely, right? So you may see a few variances come forward for things like a yard setback related to an ADU because it's additional unit, because your bylaw itself is just a little bit clumsy around that right now. But that was the goal. We thought that would be the best way to start issuing permits and also make sure that we have an opportunity to get more details correct. Site plan control for us, this did represent a loss. You see sort of my commentary with some arrows under these changes. So we've got a narrower scope of site plan control and we can use it less frequently. Projects even 8-10 units, they're still fairly significant in communities like Kincardine. So not having the ability to use a formal site plan control process does represent a significant change, perhaps even a bit of a loss. And so we are looking to try with building officials, development services, looking at ways that we can, still make sure that we get the thoroughness of the review to support things like grading and drainage and stormwater and those aspects, albeit not through the formal site plan control process. Subdivisions, there was a removal of the requirement for public meetings. Bruce County, as the approval authority, did recently determine that we should still have public meetings for subdivisions. It's extremely rare for us to have a subdivision that doesn't also have a zoning or a plan amendment, but in the interests of providing the opportunity for the public to participate, we thought that was appropriate, and we look to you to continue to host those meetings should they ever be required. And then we don't have much to say about exclusionary zoning because we still can't use it. The next area of interest was the appeals. So removal of third-party appeals, kind of what we call them. So through this, the province clarified they had already removed the rights of third-party appeals from subdivision applications. And through this, they tweaked that. They made it read better, which is good, insofar as it's a change. So it reads better in terms of who can file an appeal, and those entities are listed there. And there's a narrowing in the range of appeal opportunities for conservation authorities, only to natural hazard issues or if they're the applicant. And a further removal from the variances and the consents. So for parkland, this is the first place where I need to add a star. You'll see in my presentation, I tried to star things that are not yet in effect, and I had missed one here, and that is related to the first bullet. So Planning Act changes. The goal here in respect to parkland is to reduce the costs of affordable and attainable housing development and additional units and increase some of the cost certainty for developers. So the idea of saying if you're building affordable and attainable residential units, you don't have to do a parkland dedication or allocation. That part is not yet in effect. And the reason for that will become clear on some future slides that we're going to get into. This isn't really a change in practice in Kincardine in terms of the freezing aspect. Because you guys currently collect at the day the building permit was issued, and you've kind of had this already. So Kincardine has kind of been leading in terms of, the amount of land to be conveyed and the period that you would consider it. You guys have already considered it at the date that the building permit was issued or site plan. So this is more standardizing for the rest of the province with what you guys have already been doing in that respect. This change around exempting affordable and attainable units would get a little bit complicated if you had a subdivision and you were going to collect land as parkland as part of that project. And then there was an assertion through the submission that some of the units would be attainable and affordable, but they're not going to be built at the time that we're calculating what percentage of land is owing, right? So just having to make sure that there's a little more to be done. Yeah.
Just as a clarifier on that, so I guess if that's when the calculation's happening, but they're not built yet, what happens if they don't end up building all the affordable attainable units? Because like I've seen a lot of developments come through where they say this is going to be affordable and attainable, but then as soon as they're through site plan, you see the property go up for sale for a significant increase in price, which means someone else is technically going to be the developer. Therein, how do you control that they're actually doing what they said they were going to do when they went through the process?
I would say the good news is this is not yet in effect. That's hence the star. They have got some details to work out there. But I share the concern, and whether it's a notion of the municipality is going to try to take the parkland it knows it needs through the whatever portion is not attainable and affordable, and ultimately the final tally is made up through cash with you don't collect cash if it's attainable or affordable, and you do collect cash if it's not. That's one way that I could see, but it certainly represents some level of awkwardness, and we'll be looking for more information from the province as to how they intend this to be applied when they put it into effect.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, I might have missed this, but you know, I really believe we, developers should, buy the parkland, you know what I mean? Instead of us taking money, I haven't really seen good thing happens with the money. Is that a general practice out there? Just a question.
So I think the Planning Act through the mayor, the Planning Act recognizes that that not every project requires land to be dedicated to the municipality. So the purpose of the cash provisions of the act are for the municipality to accumulate reserves and then invest in fewer and larger parks, rather than have maybe a fragmented park system.
Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. The $1,000,000 question, Jack, and you probably can't answer it. When do you think that the province is going to talk about a figure for affordable and attainable housing? Because that has a huge impact. Toronto, it's probably $1,000,000. Up here, it's more like 400,000. Is it going to be one standard? Have they even thought about it? Because all these things relate and talk about affordability and attainability. So do you have any more insight? I'm not asking you to answer it, but do you have any more insight?
Thank you for the question. Through the mayor, we have been in contact with our local municipal services office and are looking to encourage them to encourage their ministry counterparts to consider the markets within Bruce County as they look to prepare the bulletin, really, which is what would outline the rates of affordability and attainability. So we don't have a timeline from them, but all of the aspects to which that applies are subject to the STAR, I call it in the presentation, not yet in effect. So the municipality, ahead of myself here. So just in this area, some notes in terms of needing to have a parkland dedication plan before you can pass or update your dedication bylaw. And then future opportunities would be for the municipality to start to have encumbered lands. So they could be subject to easements, for example, or be what are called publicly accessible private spaces, or POPs, as part of your parks network. So some additional opportunities, not always things that we should necessarily look down our nose at, but just more options and potential considerations for municipalities coming forward. The municipality would have the ability to refuse a proposal for parkland that a developer identifies should be provided, and then the developer would have the opportunity to appeal that to the tribunal. And the tribunal would be preparing some specific criteria for evaluation. So I think our suggestion would be, let's take a look at the criteria that come forward, and then let's try to put those into our parks plans, and then maybe we can avoid conflict as we look to receive parklands through the programming or for our programming needs associated with new growth.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm not familiar with publicly accessible private spaces. Can you give us an example of what that would look like?
So this would be like you could have, for example, a condominium development where there's a amenity area that's within the condominium. It's maybe set up with the best access for the units in the condominium, but the public is also able to, go in. There's no trespassing signs or things like that on it. So that could be an example. And the new chain, we did confirm, I knew there was maybe a question coming about the spend or allocate clause, and we did locate that. So that is in effect right now, the 60% of the money in the cash in lieu account being required to be spent or allocated, as in directed to a project within the year it's collected. Next area we had was Land Tribunal Act changes, not yet in effect. but presenting opportunities for prioritization, likely around housing supply, for example, over other types of cases. And then clarification of the existing powers the tribunal holds, but maybe just a little bit more emphasis on the ability of the tribunal to relate, dismiss things or assign costs associated with the process. The development charges, so there's new definitions of affordable and attainable housing, star added here, not yet in effect. And the knock-on changes associated with that are also not yet in effect. So I think the province is keen to move forward on significant change. I think that's what this signals. And they're taking some time to get an opportunity to address some of these details. And so that's where the delay in some of the proclamation of some of these aspects of the bill comes into play. Some significant changes. However, if you have a new DC bylaw and an extension in the effective period of those bylaws, and also changes in the services that can be paid for by charges, studies can't be used. You can't fund the studies to determine the development charges using the development charges. So you have to fund those through other means. And then some interest caps, which I think are probably a province-wide standardizing initiative.
Yes, Councillor Stewart, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Mayor. We have a couple of ASDCs, area specific development charges. Would this come into play or are those treated a little differently?
Oh, I wouldn't have an answer for that one. I'd have to check into that. Yeah. So exemptions of the attainable, affordable, and nonprofits would come into effect when they've completed the definitions of those and the associated bulletin. And again, prorating some of the rates that are collectible. So the upshot of this is, less ability and more uncertainty for municipalities to handle growth-related costs, because you won't be controlling what the developer comes forward with in terms of a proposal for affordability or attainability, and their contribution then to the growth-related costs associated with the units that are constructed.
Councillor Hinchberger, please. Oh, Councillor Hinchberger, go ahead.
I'll defer, Mayor.
You're the first one in line.
I wasn't, but I'll go. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? Thanks. It was hard enough for me to figure out where in the Planning Act the changes were made that required you to spend 60% of the money that you collected in lieu of parkland. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. In the Development Charges Act, I thought I read that the 60% revenue that must be spent annually beginning in 2023 was specific to basically water and wastewater and a certain part of roads. It didn't necessarily apply to all development charges that you might be collected, like say things related to community centers, but I can never be completely sure about anything right now.
So I guess what I know is they narrowed the scope of services that can be covered through development charges. I'd have to check in and we'll get back to you with respect to if the spend or allocate rule on development charges is across the board for the development charge or focused.
Councillor Steinhoff, great, please.
I was just gonna ask one other clarification too, like under the more uncertainty for the municipalities, because we can't predict what we can't predict. And I'm assuming policing how many are actually attainable and affordable is going to become an interesting component of all of this. to understand whether or not we're getting paid the right fees, et cetera. It's a level of monitoring that would never have otherwise really been there. I'd love to say I trust, but I'm typically a trust and verify kind of person. I guess the question that I have is, will there be any support coming down from the province? Because I see a lot of things getting downloaded down to the municipal level, but we're already struggling under different budgetary constraints similar to what the county has, obviously. So I'm just curious if they have a funding plan, should we find pinch points in the future?
I appreciate the question.
Let me answer that one for you. No.
I would say that we, throughout our comments, we've provided to the province and shared out through our director's correspondence to the local municipalities. We've been, encouraging the province to consider the resourcing requirements associated with the legislative changes that they're introducing. So the next area I have is with respect to the Conservation Authorities Act. And so through this, their scope as it relates to planning has now been limited to commenting on development issues within their core mandate of flood protection and natural hazards. There were some additional changes, including a fee freeze for the conservation authorities, changes to permit requirements. The third bullet doesn't apply to us. Removal of considering pollution from their scope of work, and direction to inventory lands and identify lands that could be available to support housing development. What that means in Bruce County is that the SVCA is no longer available to offer natural heritage comments on Planning Act applications. In anticipation of that, we did reach out and confirm with local municipalities, including yours, that the county should take the lead on this. And we engaged North South Environmental, who are doing our natural heritage planning for the official plan. So they're providing an interim service to us. We are issuing an RFP very shortly to go to market for the best option for ongoing services. And we have been directed by County Council to do a full cost recovery for natural heritage review from proponents. So at this time, that involves collecting deposits against the peer review costs. And we are underway with a fee review update to help identify the additional staff resources required to administer that natural heritage review process, as well as some of the other changes we need in order to stay in line with the Planning Act timelines coming in through Bill 109, which I didn't do slides on.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Does the county have, or can they get, if they don't, access to the GIS resources that the SVCA has those layers that show the heritage areas, the concerns?
Yes, thank you. And through the mayor, we continue to have a very good relationship with the Conservation Authority. They've been very helpful to us in helping us understand the process that they would undertake and offering those resources to us. So that is definitely an asset in terms of being able to work to screen applications appropriately and consider the information that we need to be able to address natural heritage through planning applications. So the wetland evaluation system changes were not formally part of Bill 23. That's what we are talking about. Bill 23. Okay, they were not part of Bill 23, but it was part of this whole milieu of environmental registry postings that came through. And so what these changes was a change to the manual, which is used to guide wetland evaluators as they evaluate wetlands, as well as the administration of wetlands. And so historically, wetland evaluators would go and identify the limits of the wetland, and then the MNRF would go and confirm that. And then the MNRF would update the boundaries where appropriate on the geographic information system. With these changes, the wetland evaluators evaluate the wetland, identify the boundaries, and supply the change to the ministry and to the decision, like the approval authority that's considering a planning matter. And so a wetland can be reevaluated at any time associated with the review of, typically associated with a review of a planning matter. And they've simplified wetlands in terms of saying each wetland component needs to meet the criteria of provincial significance, rather than saying, you know, a cluster of wetlands in an area that may be hydraulically connected and just happen to be, some parts are above ground and some parts are subsurface water flowing. That's not considered a complex anymore. They've removed the concept of complex wetlands. And they've also changed some of the criteria for wetland evaluation. So that's the changes to the wetland evaluation system. In terms of the Heritage Act, this is, I think, intended to increase, I guess, the rate of decision-making with respect to heritage resources in municipalities. So there's requirements now that properties that are listed on the register be designated within 2 years, or else they fall off the register and can't be put back on the register for 5 years. And then there's limitations on the ability to respond to a planning application using the registration process, and some additional powers to council with respect to heritage conservation districts. Yes.
Through you, Mayor.
Just a minute for Councillor Prenger had her hand up beforehand. If it's appropriate, go ahead. Is it okay? Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
In one of the information, in one of our previous council meetings, there was a letter from another county that was using the listing process as a way to protect properties without having to go through the entire designation process. But to me, it sounds like that would be a risky process if you don't believe that you could get them designated within the time allotment, because then they're basically excluded from the process for 5 years, therein reducing your ability to protect. Is that a correct read?
Yeah, I would say if you, I think this would drive the listing, the process of listing a property to be properties that you would consider a serious candidate for designation. Yeah.
Just hold that thought. I'd like Jack to have opportunity to finish your report here, and we're
That's it.
scoot along. That we're all done?
That's it.
Okay. I want to afford council just an opportunity to go around the table. You've heard a number of items and issues from Bill 23. And as we go into this exercise of working towards completing our comprehensive zoning, I want you to offer like a very succinct, quick, short little thing to Mr. Van Dorp and the county planning team. If your issue is, you know, fulsome development charges or more parkland or whatever it is. If you have a planning issue that you believe is important to Kincardine that we need included in our comprehensive zoning, then just even if tomorrow you change your mind to something else, that's okay. But county planning needs to hear what Kincardine is concerned about. And if I may, I want to start with Councillor Prenger, because I appreciate your ability to see some bigger zoning issues than what maybe, well, certainly more than I do. But if you have a thing about our zoning policy that you think is really important that we pay particular attention to, what is it?
Thanks, Chair, putting me on the spot. My problem is I have so many concerns. It's like I need to send Jack a list.
This is like succinct. This
I
is,
know.
this is not,
I don't have a succinct thing to say right at this moment. I have
okay, very good.
several concerns.
Thank you. Counselor Stewart, what do we need on our zoning, comprehensive zoning bylaw?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to have this question. Jack, what I'm really interested in is additional dwelling units. That area needs to be incorporated as fast as possible. I know great timing for us because you're going to introduce it and then we'll put it in a comprehensive zoning bylaw. But I think that could really help us out immediately and in the future. So that's my go ahead, full speed.
Counselor Kennedy.
Well, I'm with Counselor Stewart on that, the additional dwelling units would be near the top of my list, but, parkland. You know, I don't know when it's gonna be in effect. Maybe you can't answer that question, but, I'm just, 60% of the money, you know, cash in lieu, it might be hard each year to spend exactly that if there's not lands available. Or, I guess that includes playground equipment, anything that's in a master parks plan, correct? You know, that sort of thing. I'm a little worried about, what happens if we don't spend that money. You know, there's questions in some other spots too, you know, how do we use that money if we don't, where does it go? Thanks.
Counselor Stanoff Gray, please.
The question that I guess I would have is all of the Bill 23, most of the sections look at pushing things through at a much expedited rate, which obviously we want to do because we want affordable and attainable housing. I guess the question I have is there any limitations we can put into this zoning so that if development doesn't occur within a certain time frame, we can revoke the decisions we've made? Because that's a lot of infrastructure to carry on what ifs, which could put us into potentially uncomfortable situation. That would be my big one. Thanks.
Counselor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. And through the chair, to add on to what Councillor Steinhoff Gray said, I get a lot of the feeling from watching this and reading this that the concern from the province is that municipalities are slow rolling development. And I feel that everyone sitting at this table is the opposite. We want more housing because we know that's going to help bring things down and make it more affordable. So I guess I'd like to see what we could do or what we could add to help encourage developers to actually get shovels in the ground, so to speak, and get moving on sites that are already ready to go.
Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Disconnected.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So I guess there's quite a lot of issues with Bill 23, but I think what I'd like to see is a diverse set of housing developments. Clearly, it's been highlighted the need for affordable and attainable housing. I'm not sure that Bill 23 does a lot in relation to that. So diversity in housing developments, which may include some more high density housing.
Tiny homes. Counselor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm a strong advocate of additional residential units. I have some concerns, though, that although we've kind of legislatively paved the way for them, whether the incentive or awareness for people to actually take that avenue is there. So that's more not a policy thing, but to sell it. On the policy part, Councillor Blackwell and I had a discussion with somebody from the county at the housing forum that was held in February. And the notion we were toying around with is, say the core commercial area are pretty close to it in downtown Kincardine. If we wanted to intensify the idea that we would remove single detached as a permissible use in residential zones, grandfather or grandmother existing things. But if somebody went to demolish something, they wouldn't have the avenue of going single detached again.
Counselor Prenger. I knew we'd come around to you again.
Well, I mean, a lot of my concerns have been covered by the other counselors. One that hasn't is pre-development approvals, site prep. Yes, addressing those issues.
Jack, thank you for coming this evening to explain and listen. And thank you for your team over at Bruce County Planning. Now, there was some good news. I just got maybe this morning regarding a hiring for Wyerton. Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so we just are pleased to have recruited Jennifer Burnett, who's been a planner in Georgian Bluffs for a period of time, as our new senior development planner. So she'll be joining our Peninsula Hub team in early April. And so she'll bring a wealth of experience. Probably the biggest benefit of this for Kincardine would be more capacity for your hub senior planner, Karina Smith, to focus on the files in your area. We would see, but certainly good to have and come back to a fully staffed team with our planning division.
Okay, thank you very much. So where are we at? Oh, this in here. Yeah. Oh, all the way stop. Next on the agenda is our always stop policy. And clerk, if you read the motion, please, so that Corey may speak to the staff recommendation.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanagh, that committee of the whole recommend that council approve the all-way stop policy request as per report operations 2023-05.
Mr. Voisin.
Good evening, council, and through you, Mayor. Over the past year, we have received several requests for all-way stops at different intersections throughout the municipality. In the past, we've adopted a lot from the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 5 on how to deal with these situations. Currently, we don't have a policy in place to deal with these in a framework that's consistent and standardized process for evaluating each individual request. So we, over the past little bit, we've gotten some information together and done a bit of research of neighboring municipalities and the county on how they deal with that. And a lot is the same with the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 5 on how to deal with it. So this policy basically states the procedure of how people can request a stop, always stop at different intersections, and the criteria for how we will evaluate those intersections.
All right, questions from the council? Yes, Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just when you say lots of requests, is it groups, individuals, or service groups, or what type of request are you getting?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Some of them are grouped, certain areas. I would say our biggest concern is that people want everyone to slow down for safety. Always stops, that isn't the intent of them. It's to provide the right of way access for in the intersection. So just to provide that framework to give information to the residents that that's what they're intended for.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Is this policy basically a formalization of what staff has been, the approach they've taken all along, or is this something you've sort of developed new and we didn't have? I know we didn't have it formalized, but I guess I'm curious as to how this compares to how you've made decisions staff has made decisions in the past about certain always stops that have gone in the last couple of years.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. A lot of it is the same of our approach. It's just through the Ontario Traffic Manual guidelines, best practices, stuff like that. This ultimately takes the unbiased approach of this is exactly how we do it. And in other circumstances, I'm sure it was, there's been incidences at this intersection, so we're going to throw up some extra stops.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Just a quick, through you, Mayor, thank you very much for coming. Do you need permission from us when you put up the signs, or is this going to be one of those things in the new consent file? Once they do the report and everything, do you really need our permission, or I don't know how we're going to handle this through our policy?
CAO or Corey? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, it will still have to go through the bylaw of when we implement them to get the signs erected, such.
Counselor Inchberger?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Without getting into specifics, if we were to approve this policy, do you have a few wish list items from members of the public that would be lined up to walk through? And the second is just an ask is, don't ask me how I know this because I get accused of going in the weeds too often. But when we update the traffic bylaw, when we do anything, I think there's some things in the traffic bylaw that need to be updated based on signs that we've installed. Like, I'm not sure when we did Queen Street South and put a few more stop signs in the area of Huron Terrace, that they got incorporated into the traffic bylaw. That's.
Would you like to speak to that? Or nod your head and smile and say, okay? There's never anything wrong with bringing an update about, this is where we've been. We have changed it to better fulfill our policy guidelines. And these, if I might, this is the always stop policy we're developing, but you'll notice in the information reports, they are Huron Terrace temporary stop. So it is the staff's recommendation to put them in and to take them out. So it's, and anyway, so two different things. Okay. Would you like to get a different report from staff?
No,
please?
no, they're going to be entirely taken offline. I think the report is referring to temporary stops that we would put in because of the Queen Street project this year. The ones I'm referring to are stops that we put in on Huron Terrace as a result of prior work done on Queen Street south of the Pentangor that I think look permanent now.
Permanent placements on like at Albert Street?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, they were done as part of the Queen Street Bridge
Okay, very good.
before my time, but yeah.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Prenger, please.
Yes, sorry, through you, Mayor, just a clarification on that. I actually had a question about those stop signs myself and didn't know if this was the appropriate time to bring it up. So I'm glad you did. Yeah,
Well,
but,
if it's about the policy that we're talking about.
okay,
yeah.
yeah, well, I guess it is. Those stop signs on Huron Terrace and that were, I understood they were supposed to be temporary. They look like they're permanent now. Did that come through council, like Councillor Stewart said then, to be a decision made to make them permanent? Or was it not? Are they staying permanent? Like, I'm confused because to me, they were put up to they do not adhere to the policy if they're gonna be permanent. So I wouldn't think they'd become permanent. I'd think they'd be removed
Yeah, the temporary ones were,
as temporary only.
we probably need to do a motion on that.
So how do we get, So I guess my
Perhaps,
question is,
perhaps
we're
we can
giving them
ask
the reins?
staff, could you bring us back a report and just indicate perhaps the path that was taken, the intent? Oh, our Director of Infrastructure is online. Mr. Weiser, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Craig, and I apologize for not being able to be live in person this evening, but those particular stop signs were through a staff report requested to be placed on a temporary basis. The initial driver was the Queen Street Bridge Rehabilitation Project. Since that time, we've actually done other major projects that have caused us to continue to use Huron Terrace as a bypass. So when we did Queen Street South and now when we're doing the Queen Street work in the downtown core. So at the present, we didn't address them in the report, but I would suggest that they be considered to be maintained on a temporary basis. And then if council did elect to adopt the proposed policy that's been prepared for them, then we would take a look at those intersections as well as Broadway Street as an example on Huron Terrace is one of the primary asks that we get from several members of the community. So we would put them through the tests of the policy to see if they were warranted.
Thank you for that explanation. Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just a general overview, really, when we're looking at implementation of possible four-way stop signs, is perhaps a consideration can be given to roundabouts, which are more efficient and better for the environment.
Any other questions regarding the all-way stop policy? All in favor? And that is carried. All right, 6.2 information reports. This is much like the consent agenda that we have on other council packages. If there are any questions regarding any of these information reports, you can either address them now or ask staff to put them back on the agenda for a different meeting for a more fulsome conversation. Councillor Steinoff Gray and then Councillor Stewart, please.
Yeah, I had a question about the Bruce Avenue closure. And it was one of the things that's come out of like some of the constituents that have been reaching out, and it was how they got notified of what's going on with the road and the closure itself. There was some concerns that they didn't really know what was going on. And I don't know whether that's because we're not engaged in looking at the different platforms and media releases, but I thought I would just ask a general question on how we've been notifying the individuals that are residents in that area of the closure and the plans around it, if you don't mind.
Almost every time when I open up my computer, there's another note from infrastructure and development. Bruce Ave is closed due to poor driving conditions. I acknowledge that no matter how often you post it, there will be somebody that misses the message. So from my perspective, it is frequently annoying me because there's the same message on the machine again. So we can have our CAO just ask staff just to confirm that it's 7 times 7 ways or whatever it is. That's the communication department's strategy. So Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through you, Mayor. It's probably just a check of if there was a silver lining to the Bruce Avenue closure update. Adam, you can check me. Is that at least for the 2022 asset management plan for the municipality of Kincardine in the area of roads, this wasn't a surprise. Is that correct?
Through you,
And
Mayor
basically-
Craig. Yeah, absolutely. The road condition, it's been on the list as long as I've been in Kincardine as a staff member. And the pavement condition index rating that we received from the scanned LiDAR overview of all of our roads, it's one of the lower roads in terms of ratings in general. So yeah, not a surprise.
Councillor Stewart, you had a question?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor Adam, I'm glad you're joining us. I want to talk about D. Are you still standing? Lake Street servicing update. I'm going to ask a bold thing. I know that you and I and the council has been working on this for a long time, but I'm going to ask the council and actually make a motion that we put this project as a consideration only on 2024 budget, so it doesn't leave us completely. And I'll be bringing probably in the next month or two a notion of motion, but I don't want this to leave. This is the second most important beach we have in the community, and I still like to have this front and center. So I'll be putting a motion in right now that we consider this $750,000 project for 2024 budget consideration. Making that motion right now. Would anyone like to second it?
Excuse me, Councillor Stewart, is that a motion or a notice of motion? Is there any need to consult with legislative services just to make sure that what you're asking is what council actually needs to consider? I'm not discounting what you're saying. That's not the point. But if it's two different things to have a motion now and a notice of motion that comes in another week or so for another agenda. Which would you prefer, sir?
I'd like this motion to stand tonight. My notice of motion would be quite different than this. But I like this to stand. I don't want this to leave the agenda for now. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that we include 750,000, I think is the number you used for Bruce, for Lake Street reconstruction or service updates. Servicing update to be considered in the 2024 budget, capital budget. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Prenger? Okay, so discussion, please. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Sorry, this is just a point of procedure through the chair. Would approving that not put us in violation of a prior existing bylaw, that it would already be on the books and cause a conflict because of the existing 60% rule? Like I foresee that being an issue unless we're willing to go back and repeal that bylaw first. It seems to me that that policy would put us in conflict.
I think that the consideration of this would be based upon the 60% rule. If we do not have that support from the neighboring community or the participating community, then that would automatically preclude it from being included in the budget.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. I think I have two questions. I know I have one for sure. Is there already an existing capital project for this in the 5-year capital plan, or is this kind of outside in a parking lot somewhere?
Through you, Mayor Craig, it would be outside in the parking lot, strictly being that there isn't existing servicing or assets there for us to replace. And it's a servicing request from the community, so it wouldn't be reflected.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Why I brought this motion forward, I just want to make sure that it's front and center. There's going to be some additional work on the beach itself with some water testing and everything. And if we ever found out that we polluted the beach, we'd have to close it. So it's more preventative. All I'm asking is for consideration. I think you'll find my notice of motion later on. We'll cover it and we'll change this. But for now, I just want to keep it on the table because right now, unfortunately, we parked it and we turned it down last year. So thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, please.
Okay, through you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. So the clarification is the reason we're asking for this on, even though we have 70% of folks not in favor of it, is in case there is a issue where the existing septics are not doing what they're supposed to do and there's a risk to the lake. So we would keep it on file for assessment at that point. That's all we're talking about right now. Okay, thank you.
It is my understanding that this motion is just a little red flag that goes up beside this number to make sure that it is part of the discussion. There's all sorts of guidelines regarding participation, purpose, all sorts of things. Those really haven't even begun to be nearly as fulsome as they would have to be before we would ever include that. Is there any more discussion regarding this motion? All in favor? And that's carried. Any other items from the information reports? Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kenny, that this committee of the whole adjourn at 6:53 PM.
All right, so we're back in council again. No, the adjourn, oh, did we vote on that? All in favor of doing that? Okay. So the original motion was that we go into committee of the whole and then upon return, yeah, but we did vote. All right, always stop policy bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Prenger, that the always stop policy bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-037.
Any discussion? All in favor? That was carried. Member of council, general announcements. Councillor Kennedy, how be you start?
Okay, through the chair, you know, I should have spoke up earlier, but it's one of the best motions we've brought forward in a long time, Councillor Hinchberger. You know, my 5 years in politics, doesn't matter if it's federal, provincial, or municipal, everybody talks about affordable housing. It sure would be nice if we could get something going and be the leader in something instead of the follower. That's my comments. Thanks.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'm just pleased to announce that the Tiverton Lions Club had voted, and we're donating a defibrillator to the Kincardine Food Bank, which is located at the Knox Presbyterian. I got a thumbs up from my counselor. So they will have that in place within a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Excellent announcement, but the food bank is at the Church of the Messiah. The food bank. Yes, no, down the hill a bit. Yep. Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
I'm looking for it in my phone. I can't find the exact details, but I'm gonna get this wrong. I'm gonna look to Jillian to help me. The naturalization, I want to say the tree group, help me. Kincardine Naturalize, thank you. They're doing fundraising right now. They have some amazing raffle ticket prizes. I think it's 2 for $40. A lot of different businesses in the local area are rallying behind them for the important work that they do. And I just wanted to encourage anyone who hasn't bought the raffle tickets yet to get out there and get some raffle tickets, although I'm hoping I win the prizes. Thank you.
I believe the draw is on Thursday. Thursday at lunchtime, yes. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, the first thing I have is Blinky's Bash, where we're kicking off the Downtown Dig event. This is March 18th, this Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. down on Queen Street. I know I'll bring my girls out. We're going to have a great time. So I hope everyone's there and I get to see everyone. And the second one I'm borrowing from Councillor Blackwell is to remind everyone that it is Lots of Socks Day coming up on March 21st. And so I'm going to challenge all the counselors here because we have a meeting on the 20th. I want to see your best socks. So we're going to have a little sock contest. So rock socks, your choice. But either way, I hope that everyone brings out and raises some awareness for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, Chair. I actually had just wanted to express my support for the Kincardine Naturalization Project group as well.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Nothing further tonight, Mayor.
What you want my spot?
Sure. Are you deferring again?
No, sorry, this is something that's really important. And you know, our summer camp, my grandkids love to be in, registration is March 21st, starting at 7 a.m. So that's really important because I've seen by 9 a.m. that they've been sold out. I've seen them, I think last year was a couple of weeks, but you know, if you want to get into your kids into a fun camp at the Davidson Center, that's the spot, 7 a.m., March 21st. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Clark.
The waterfront master plan is holding an open house tomorrow evening, 6 to 7:30 at the Davidson Center.
I certainly enjoyed attending the International Women's Day celebration at the Pavilion this past Friday evening. Shout out to West Coast Catering, who did a charcuterie board about as long as the council table down one side. It was enormous and fabulous. And congratulations to Shirley John, who won the Woman of Distinction Award. Very capable leader in all regards. And also in regards to the downtown dig, residents might notice that there are no trees downtown anymore. They have been removed from the sidewalk area in preparation, and there were also surveyors downtown getting ready. The downtown dig is approaching way fast. which sounds, and our manager of water services and all, I forget the title, I'm sorry, is environmental services. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do now? CIO, anything from yourself?
Yeah, just one update from Community Services. There is a 2023 Spring Recreation Expo. So it's hosted by the municipality's Community Services Department. And groups are invited to have their programs, events, services, and volunteer opportunities featured. And you can register your service group or community organization this Wednesday, that's this Wednesday, March the 15th. And the event, the expo, it takes place on Tuesday, March the 21st from 6 till 8 p.m. at the Davidson Center in the banquet hall.
Do you have any announcements, clerk? You have a bylaw? Okay,
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Kincardine on March 13th, 2023 be deemed to read a first, second, and third time finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-038.
all in favor? And congratulations to council again this evening. We went through a pile of information. And I certainly appreciated your comments regarding the direction for our comprehensive zoning bylaw. Those comments, yeah, you know, Jack sits there and listens, but they sink in and he says, oh man, okay. I get what that community's saying. Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that this council adjourn at 7 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried.